Hi everybody, this is Kate with Glazer's Camera. I hope you're having a great Friday afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank you for joining us and spending part of your day with us today. We are celebrating our 12th annual Photofest all weekend. There are great deals to be had, including deals on filters, so head to our website and check out the promos page to see what that looks like for you. Those discounts are available in-store or online. For today, we are wrapping the day with the awesome Matt Shannon, who is a Lee Filters ambassador, and he's going to share some of his work and talk about the tools beyond your camera lens and tripod. Before we get to that, super quick, as always, if you have questions during this presentation, please feel free to post those in the YouTube chat. I'm going to be in there. Devin is going to be in there, who's running everything behind the scenes. We also have Patrick and Lillian from Lee Filters who are hanging out and will help facilitate getting some of those questions answered. And we'll do a live Q&A towards the end of the session. So without any further ado, I'd love to introduce Matt, and we're going to get that conversation started. Matt, hi, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Glazer's Photofest and Lee Filters for giving me this great opportunity. I'm really excited, and I think we can just dive right in. So
Yeah, that's
tools beyond
correct.
your camera, lens, and tripod. All right, so for the agenda, I first want to introduce myself and tell you a little bit of who I am. Then I want to get into sort of the basis so we can build off of that, which is our camera, lens, and tripod. And then we're going to move on to the meat and potatoes. So we're going to talk about tools around us, applying skills and technique. And there'll be a conclusion, and I'm hoping some questions and answers. Who will benefit from this? Well, I hope actually everyone who has a camera, even with a smartphone, all the way up to a professional. I think there's a lot of useful techniques and tools in here. And really this applies for anyone out in nature. So even if you're a wedding photographer that takes pictures outdoors, this I think will apply to you as well. From this presentation, I hope to inspire you, maybe reinvent your photography and take sort of that adventure, going out and taking photos, maybe with a different eye, and maybe even up your game and bringing up a couple of levels with some of these tools. And one of the biggest things that I think would be great is revisiting your favorite places that you've felt like you've tapped out of. You've already gotten the best shots. Well, I hope to challenge you on that and maybe get you back out there to take a different shot. So who is this guy, Matt Shannon? Who am I? Well, I am Canadian. Woohoo! And no, I do not live in an igloo. Despite all of the time I sleep out in the snow, I grew up on the east coast of Canada, so just southern New Brunswick, where the world's highest tides are. And I moved all the way to the other side of Canada, where I live now, which is on Vancouver Island, just outside of Victoria. So actually quite close to a lot of you that are down in Seattle. I'm just a ferry ride away. This is my lovely wife. She comes on a lot of adventures with me, and she photographs as well. She is a full-time ocean scientist. She's got her biology degree, and I'm inspired by some of the shots that she takes. She goes up to the Arctic with work, and these are a few of her images. So I'm surrounded by photography. So let me explain a little bit of my journey and the beginning stages, where I've come from, I guess. And it kind of all started with travel photography. For a lot of people, I think it's the same, in my early 20s. So I went to South America, fell in love with the culture. I mountain biked Death Road. I've been up glaciers. I've even tried dressing like the people. I went to East Asia, again, fell in love with the people, the culture, took my camera with me, and And then as I went through my 20s, I started developing more and more of an eye. And here I am in Europe, taking pictures all over and really falling in love with the art of photography. I'm also pleased and pumped to announce that I've been to 49 out of the 50 states, and the only state that I have not been to is Alaska. Curse you, COVID, because I was about to go. So yeah, I've traveled quite a bit, but I used my full-time job at that time to fund my travel, and I built houses start to finish. And then in the same company, I also moved into a different department where I built cell sites all over British Columbia. And with that, I got to travel on helicopters, take amazing landscapes and see some incredible sights. And I was able to build my skill through my 20s, not through traveling, but also at work, where I started to shoot for these companies. So for helicopter companies, I did some safety videos, and I was able to also shoot for tourism. And through my time working for this company, I began publishing more and more of my work, and also working with companies like tourism companies, Tourism BC, that sort of thing. So from there, I took the leap to being a full-time photographer, where I connected with some crazy, awesome companies like Lee Filters. And here's a few of the ambassadors, or me as an ambassador for F-Stop. They make incredible backpacks and stuff for camera equipment. FLM Tripod, which makes really great carbon fiber tripods, and Lee Filters, which we're going to get into a little bit more about the tools that I use with Lee Filters. So yeah, that is who I am in a nutshell. If you have any questions and stuff, feel free to put them in the comments. But that is a quick 10-minute rendition about who I am. All right, moving on to camera, tripod, and lenses. Now, as a professional photographer, or even during my developing years in this world of, how to be a professional photographer, I thought it was quite simple that you had a camera, a lens, and a tripod, and that's what you needed. And you could be a professional photographer. Obviously, you need a bit of the eye, the clients, someone to pay you for it. But what I want to talk to you about is so much more that you can use to advance your creative ability beyond these three things, and put that twinkle in your eye. So this is what we have. We're not gonna go into, or I'm not gonna start talking about settings on your camera, or what tripod is best, or what lens I shoot with through and through for these shots. We're going to move on from here, but I will be saying, in some of the slides, I used a telephoto lens, or I used a tripod to get that shot. But this is where we're moving on from this. This is our base. And we're going to say, boom, we got that covered. Now it's on to tools beyond your camera, lens, and tripod. So let's get into it. All right, transportation. Now, a lot of us drive vehicles. Some of us might even have a boat, kayaks. And I really think that there's a huge use for thinking outside the box in even the vehicles that we use. And how can we create unique shots by using even the day-to-day bike that we might have. So one of them might be portrait photography. And here's just a simple example of going out, and instead of just taking a picture of a beautiful girl, outdoors, it could even be a rainy day down on a street road, and all of a sudden we've created a story. We've lit up the lights of this beetle and create a bit of an emotion with this shot. Here's another one for those who shoot weddings. Now, without the car, this is still a very whimsical, magical shot. You know, you tipping back the bride. But with the car, I feel like there's a little bit more of a story of sweeping her away, getting into the car, and taking off. And this you can play to your advantage, and think about different forms of uh, of sharing an experience. And I do it all the time as a photographer, not even for taking an image that I hope a client will purchase and put up on their wall. But here's one where I was on my motorbike driving out to take some pictures of fall leaves. And I captured this shot of my motorbike and the adventure. And I share this, and I want to show, followers, even if you're, an influencer, using your transportation, in this case, my motorbike, to kind of sell this story, and people will buy it. Tourism might want it, or even BMW in this case. So it's thinking about some of the other tools that you might have around you. Now, here's another form of using your vehicle, and I use my Jeep all the time as a stepladder. Now, a lot of people have trucks, and I don't really think that someone's going to get their smart car out and hopefully stand on top of it and take some pictures. But in this case, I seen this fence. There's a storm over by the airport, and I wanted to get above it. So without even thinking, I thought, oh, I'll just get on top of my Jeep. And from that, I could actually get above that metal fence and take this picture. So it's really just thinking about, how do you overcome some obstacles? And I do this actually quite a bit with my vehicle. And I don't always use it as a step ladder. And on the right here, you can see my wife. She's standing up here to try and take a better advantage point of the winding road. But in the middle here, I'm using it for it's part of kind of the company adventure Trek West. I did some light painting with a headlamp, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But I'm selling, adventure, and I'm using the vehicle in this case. And on the far left here, I wanted to take some twilight shots, or some astrophotography of the stars. And it was a really junky area, like it's nice. It's just where we parked. So instead, I use this time to share with my followers. I'm out on an adventure. I've got my headlamp inside that tent, which is a great tool, and we'll talk more again about that. And I'm kind of selling this lifestyle that I enjoy, and it's really part of my photography and how I get those shots. And here's another technique of using your transportation, in this case, a vehicle. And I had to do this shoot for a commercial company, and it was really late at night. This is during the summer solstice, almost around this time of year. And there was no cars. It was like dead, no one in the parking lot. And if I just took this picture with the traffic light, these traffic lights, and it presented to them, it kind of loses a bit of that, where are the people, where's the energy? So instead, I could put my camera on a tripod with a remote and drive up and down and take multiple pictures, and in Photoshop kind of layer them together to get this energy, these lights streaming of traffic, and it kind of changes the energy of this photo. And again, here on the left hand side, I was out on a motorbike trip, and this is an older picture where I was like, oh, I wanted to get some of the stars, and it looked, I don't know, it was all right. There's this black ridge line, and everything was super dark, and then you had stars. And I asked my buddy, I said, hey, could you drive your motorbike through the scene? And it was 15 seconds or 20 seconds open shutter. He drove through it, and now it feels like you're on a road trip at nighttime going through the scene. So that's how you can use vehicles, motorbikes, for your photography. Another a use out of transportation is boats, kayaks, or ferries. Here's a shot that I took not too long ago where you can only capture it by kayak or by boat. So what's unique about this shot? One is I'm low to the water, and you can't be this low and get this angle by staying on the shore, and I'm going to explain that a little bit more in a moment. Another thing is I could line up the lighthouse right here, where it's right in the V of the valley that's in behind. These are the Olympic Mountains, and this is a lighthouse up here in Canada. Now, there's also no obstacles out in this area, and I mean that might change from day to day. You might have some sailboats coming and going, but there's also no crowds, and it's really relaxing. You're out on the kayak, really enjoying it. So here again is the lighthouse, circled in green, and some areas that you could capture this picture are from this area, and it would be at this angle. But the problem is with that is that you don't get the mountains in behind, and you'll see in a moment. Here's another spot where you could be on land, and you're going to have some other islands and trees in the way, so that angle doesn't work. So instead, I wanted to get this angle, which I looked on Google Maps. I decided to launch my kayak from here, which is a little park, and I put my boat right there, and I got that angle. Here it is again from much further out, where the red light, or the red marker up here at the top, that's me in the kayak. And where you see the cross connection, or even where this green arrow is, that's where the lighthouse is. And the mountains are right down here. So it's all about getting the perfect angle. Yes, you can get this lighthouse from many different spots, but this is one angle that you need a boat for to be able to get it. And I think that's quite unique. Not only is it a cool shot, in my opinion, and very unique, but it's very relaxing out there on the water. So why wouldn't you want to go out in a boat anyways? Now, kayaks can be expensive for some. I think they're about $400 or so. Like this is just a lake kayak, and you can get it at Costco and stuff. But people rent them all the time, just for their leisure. Now, I want to make sure that people don't take this and decide they're going to go swimming with their camera equipment to get the shot. So I used a dry bag, I clipped it in, I kayaked out to the location. Once I was stable, I then pulled out my camera and I used a telephoto lens to zoom in to get that compression with the mountains in behind. So again, there is some risk. Yes, I did go out there in the water, and I could have dropped my camera, but I didn't. Another form of transportation is the ferry. Now, I won't go into crazy detail about this. Some of us might be coming from like inland Idaho, Arizona, Saskatchewan, and you might not have any ferries. But this shot down here, this is Mount Rainier, and I got this from one of the Washington ferries. And now we're in open water. And the one thing that I don't use when I'm on a ferry is typically a wide angle lens. I usually get out a telephoto lens and I zoom in and I focus on key compositions. And in this case, I was out in the ferry right here, floating out on my way to Seattle. And there I am on top of the boat, and I'm looking over at Mount Rainier right here. And I took out my telephoto lens, and I was really lucky to get a little sailboat coming in between, and I was able to capture this image. Canada also has ferries just north. And again, I'm on this ferry looking over at the Sea to Sky Mountains, and I was able to snap this picture. It's an older picture, but you can't get this unless you're on a boat, or in this case, a ferry. So it's using some of those to start thinking of how you can use it to your advantage. Mountains. Now, this might not be for everyone if you don't have mountains, but even if you travel, say if you go to Maui, in this case, I'm up on one of the mountains here. It's 10,000 feet up. And this is more of a skill or technique. So instead of taking a picture of the whole vista, which a lot of people go up there and do, and it is quite beautiful, it kind of looks like you're taking a picture out of a plane. And here, without a point of reference, in this case, me standing on the edge here, you now get this wow, did you drive all the way up to the top? Did you climb this mountain? There's a bit more storytelling that comes into play. And so these next few slides, I want to just help you think about using that advantage point where you get this beautiful vista to take different photos. And we'll talk about some other tools and stuff with that as well. Here is one shot that I took from a mountain, and it wasn't even up that high. And that mountain is here on Salt Spring Island. It's about 30 minutes from here. And I'm not even up 2,000 feet. And you can drive up to the top here and there's a view. So instead of going up to the top and grabbing a wide angle and taking a picture of this beautiful view, I decided to grab my telephoto lens and zoom in to, in this case, a sailboat going through some of the clouds. And I'm up above the clouds. And it's just it's a very unique shot that gets you start thinking as to like, you know, how did you get that? And from a high vantage point, that helps you capture some of these images. Apps, websites. We're going to talk about Photopils, weather, tides, surf apps, and how this is very useful to photographers. So the weather forecast, I'm sure a lot of you use the weather forecast even when you're not taking photos. And some of it here in Victoria is just for snowstorms. You're like, everyone knows when the snow's coming because we're all either petrified or don't have snow tires for it. And I'm pretty sure it's the same for Seattle as well. And so using the weather app or even going online for snowfalls is quite common. But I'm here to talk about after the snow and about some other techniques that you can use to go out and take some unique shots. One thing I want to say about, so this is the snowstorm that happened just this year, and I went out knowing the snow and the wind was all going to be blowing, but bring lots of lens cloths. So when you're out shooting, you got your lens, the snowflakes are coming into your lens, you got to make sure you have plenty of wipes to go ahead and take away that moisture, else you're going to have blurry images. Or in this case, the snow is blowing to the side, and so I'm perpendicular to the snowfall. So we know when the snow's coming, everyone's excited and you're out taking pictures. But the day after, or a few days after, when all the snow is kind of melted off the trees and there's footprints everywhere, I don't see any photographers out. And I understand why. It doesn't look pretty anymore. You got slush on the side of the road and it's not pretty. Now, I look at the weather forecast and I find out if it's going to be sunny and if it's going to be warmer. And it's usually warmer after snowfall here in Victoria. It doesn't last that long before the snow starts melting. And that's when I pick a high advantage point. Like here, I went to Mount Newton, set up my camera, and I knew that with cold snow, frozen snow, and you got warm air on a sunny day, you're going to get tons of fog rolling along the valley. And that's a great opportunity to take pictures like this. And this was just, you know, I'm going to go back to these slides. These are just with my iPhone picture. So the one on the left here, I'm up there with my wife and it's before the sunrise. And the one on the right is afterwards. We packed up and took off. So what I'm waiting for is that sun in that golden hour to kind of shine through all the fog that's moving through the forest down below us. And you can create incredible images. And I think a lot of photographers are the same. When you have fog and sunlight, you get this incredible magical, you know, feeling, whether you're on the coast and it's blowing through the woods. And so I use the weather app to forecast, you know, fog or these opportunities that think outside the box. I'm not thinking about pretty snow on trees. I'm thinking about something else. And you can see the blue of the snow that's reflecting off the blue sky here with the warm from the golden hour. And of course, with the weather app, when it rains, you want to be prepared. So there's these baggies that you can get that allow you to put your hand through to grab your camera and take pictures. And then there's plenty of these sort of bags that go over your camera equipment. In this case, I'm using, I think it's an f-stop bag, and I got a nice case, fully prepared for all the conditions when I'm out taking pictures. Another app that I use all the time, and this might not be applicable for those who are inland, but if you're close to the ocean, tide charts. And you don't even need an app. You can just go online, it's free, and you can type in the city or location where you are from, and you can find out when low tide is, high tide is, and how large those tides are going to be or how far they're going to go out. And here's one example of just safety. I'm in Portugal. Again, I'm up quite high, looking down, a different vantage point, which gives me more of a 3D look instead of seeing the horizon with the fishermen. There, I'm up higher to get kind of this big vantage point of the ocean and the big waves. And you can see that the tide's going out. All the sand behind him is all smooth from past waves that have gone past him. And for safety, he's out there fishing, and a lot of people were quite worried that he was just going to get swept away into the ocean. So safety is one of them. Now, another is forecasting when the tide's going to go out, also using the weather app to find out if it's going to be sunny or not. And in this case, I went to Botanical Beach, and it's here on Vancouver Island. And at low tide, you get to experience these beautiful pools that have a ton of marine life. And the only way you can actually experience this is by knowing when the low tide is and going out there and taking photos of it. So that's quite useful. Now, this is another beach. It's called Mystic Beach. It's kind of a famous one now here on Vancouver Island. And what I enjoy doing when I take pictures, in this case, of waterfalls coming off into the ocean, is I like shooting down the shoreline. Now, kind of want to know if this tide is going to be coming in, and I need to prepare, whether for boots or hip waders, but even for just waves and stuff, because I have expensive camera equipment. So coming from the East Coast, we have tides like this, where like 40 feet are some of the tides within a 6-hour period. So you kind of want to know if you're going to take a picture of a boat, do you want it on water or do you want it on land? So is the tide coming in or is it going out? So again, there's that safety element, but also for me taking a picture of a waterfall, I want to know, am I going to be further out away from that waterfall at a different angle? And again, bring your boots if you're going to do that. You can go barefoot, but barnacles are quite hard on the feet. So boots are a great tool to have. So let's go into a little bit more detail as to using tides to planning a photography trip. And these are two photos of Mystic Beach again. And the one on the left, the tide is further out. And what that means is that there's way more rocks. I have to be higher up on my tripod to clear the rocks so I can actually see that waterfall so it doesn't get obstructed. And it's way more like you can see all the suds and the foam and stuff. It's a little bit more messier, and I actually prefer what's on the right. And this one gets a way more clean viewing of winding through the image to take a look at that waterfall. And you can see before I circled this rock right here, and I knew that on the left-hand side, the tide was further out, where I positioned my tripod and my camera. I knew I was going to move it, and I already thought about this rock and how I wanted to take a different angle, lower to the sand, and getting that nice S curve wrapping around that rock all the way leading to the waterfall. So this is using the tides to my advantage, knowing that it's going to keep coming in, and I'm going to be moving my camera from one position to the next to get the most out of this shot. And I live on Vancouver Island. I can come back to this beach, but some people who are visiting and they only have one day here, you got to know when the tides are so you can shoot. Also, is it sunny? Is it not? And then bring your boots. Here's another example of knowing if the tide's going to be out or not. I went to Tofino, which is all about kind of their beaches and surfing, and taking photos of fireworks is great. And you see them, every year. And without a point of reference, kind of like me being up on that cliff, knowing that I climbed that or drove up to the mountaintop when I took that picture, this right here kind of grounds these fireworks to a location. And I wanted to capture that sandy beach with some reflection here for New Year's. So I looked at the tide chart, knew that I was out, it's going to be a clear day. The wind wasn't blowing too much, so I parked my camera right here. And you only have 10 minutes, and then the fireworks are all done. So you got to set everything up, take your photos, and know that you've nailed it. Photopils. So the apps and websites that I talked about earlier are free. Photopils, I think, cost $19 Canadian. So what is that, like 30 cents American? I'm just kidding. No, but it's I don't think it's crazy expensive, but this app is amazing, and they're not paying me to say that. I'm just really pumped about this app. I use it all the time. So one thing that Photopils does, it tells you when the sun is coming up and when it's setting, and then the moonrise and moonset. And you can see over here on the left-hand side, there's some examples of it showing, blue hour, what time, and how long it's going to be for. Golden hour, again, blue hour near the end of the day, and in twilight time. But you can also select a map setting where you can actually see, you can pick a building. You can pick any building anywhere in the world, like Rome, the Colosseum. You can pick that Colosseum and know where the moon is going to rise, where the sun is going to rise, and also where it's going to set. You can also scroll through the dates. You can find out when it's going to rise and set 2 years from now or 10 years from now. Another thing that's really cool is that you can also see the trajectory. So as the sun passes through the sky, you can set your time and you can see it travel. And that's what these other bars are here for, is showing your travel of that sun. All right, let's go into further details about this. I use this for moonrise especially. So you have here in Victoria, let's talk about Seattle. Seattle, it rains quite a bit, probably just as much, if not more than here. And you have 12 full moons within a year, unless you have a blue moon. But once a month, you can go out and capture a full moon rising. And with the weather and stuff, you're really narrowing that down to like once every 2 or 3 months. So you're going to want to know exactly where it's going to come up to take that picture of the moonrise. So how do photographers do it? Well, they don't do it alone. Here again, I'm up on a mountain. I'm not super high. And I positioned Photopils up on this same mountain to find out that the moon was going to come up over these islands. So you have the Juan de Fuca Island. I think this is Friday Harbor, and San Juan Island is right here. And there's a few other islands. And I can see where the moon is going to rise. And I can also see what time it's going to be at a certain, elevation, or as the moon is coming up, where is it going to travel through my my frame in the camera. And here I'm using a telephoto lens. I'm zooming in to that moon coming up, and I was able to take this photo. Now, just like the moonrise and moonset, you can use it for sunrise and sunset. And you can plan what it's going to be the next day, and again, you can plan a year from now. So I went to Ukilit, a place here on Vancouver Island, and I walked along the shoreline the day before, and I took it. And this is later, this is, I don't know what time it is of the day. It's probably like 10 o'clock. And you can go to what they call AR mode, which is a live preview on your cell phone. And you can actually see the scenery in front of you. And as you move your phone, it'll show you where the sun is going to be passing through on your phone. And here you can see the different colors. They're also showing you golden hour as well as daylight hour. And I can see that this island way out here in this image, that the sun is going to be coming up over there. Now, I didn't like that position. So the next day I was able to set up my camera somewhere else because I wanted to get closer to the ocean here. I looked at the tide charts. I also looked at the weather app to find out if it was going to be clear or not. And the next day I moved a little bit further down, and I was able to pinpoint exactly where the sun was going to be able to get this shot. This shot might not be for everyone, but I was able to plan this through 24 hours before and know exactly where the sun was going to be, which is a huge advantage point. Now, this image, I'll be referring to it again in the future, but you can see how smooth it is down here. This is an 8-minute long exposure. And I'm going to be talking about how I captured the ocean moving like that for 8 minutes with my camera. And again, I'm looking at the tide charts, knowing that the tide is not going to sweep me away because I know how high the tide level is going to be. And I'm out taking these shots. I'm pumped. Here's another one where we had a whole bunch of forest fires, and this lighthouse is a couple of hours away. So you can either risk knowing that you might not even get the shot because the sun might not be positioned in this area, or you can take a look at these apps and you can find out, okay, where this lighthouse is, the sun will be in that area. And with the smoke and the fog, maybe I have a chance of capturing something unique and different. Night photography. So again, using Photopils in these apps in night photography. One of the things is positioning, say, the Milky Way. And this last image that I was showing you, this church, this is star trails. So I found out where the North Star was and where this church steeple was, and I was able to do some star trails, which is, unique to this area. And I'm using these apps to find out what type of shot can I walk away from. And instead of just going there every night and trying and testing it out, I can use this app to my advantage. With the night photography, you can still walk up to, say, this lighthouse, for example, during the daytime. And again, you can go to a live view on your smartphone, and you can see where the Milky Way is going to be passing through behind that lighthouse at a certain time. So instead of showing up at midnight to be like, all right, I'm going to take this great shot, and finding out the Milky Way is like 4 hours, swung off to a different area, you can plan these shots again, from another country away. In this case, you can actually go there if you're close and you're knowing that, and the next day you're going to go and take a picture. You can go on your phone and look up and see where the Milky Way is going to be, plan it, go to sleep, wake up, and actually come and be prepared for the shot. Very powerful and very cool. And I use it quite a bit. The one on the left here, you can kind of see a haze of the Milky Way, but at least I can look at the app and know, okay, I've got a bit of the Milky Way here. This is sort of the framework in which I want to take this picture. Another shot here in the middle, this I knew that the tide was going out. I had boots on. Actually, yeah, it is going out. And I knew that the Milky Way was going to be in this area, and I was able to go ahead and frame this shot while I was camping along the Juan de Fuca Trail. And on the far right here, I'm standing on top of my Jeep. I'm using my transportation as a stepladder and trying to get a little bit higher of this light pollution. And I also wanted to see these sunflowers by the thousands instead of almost a two-dimensional where I got sunflowers, horizon, tons of light pollution, and then the sky above. So just a unique and different approach by using apps, and in this case, my Jeep to stand on top of. Here's another shot where if you have a client, they're paying you money to go ahead and take shots. They know you're the best. And you want to capture something that is wowsy and better than the rest. Well, here's a castle that's close to here. And to be able to capture a straight on photo of this castle with the sun and that starburst right to the side, you got to be able to be there at the right time. And if you have paid clients, in this case, there's 2 models here that tourism paid for to have at this location, I can now direct them and say, at 10:30, we can take a picture here at the castle. We can get set up. That's when the sun is going to be at the perfect spot. If not, the sun could be way off to the right, and it could be extreme as far as not composition, but exposure. Really dark shadows, extremely bright sun. But instead here, I could actually take full advantage of the sun and behind and use it. And so this is using Photopils and knowing where the sun's going to be and not. All right, moving on to filters. We're going to talk about 2 specific types of filters, ND filters and polarizers. So what are filters? in photography, you use filters to place them over your lens to change the exposure. Sometimes it's the white balance or the color grade. And it's kind of your post editing that you do while you're on set. And some photographers, they just do this. They might not do corrections in Photoshop or Lightroom. They might just add, you know, pieces of glass, and it doesn't always have to be glass in front of their lens. So polarizers, how does it work? Now, there is like YouTube videos and people that just talk about polarizers and how they work. So I'm going to do my best here. But basically, you have a light source. And in this case, we're going to say we have the sun. And the sun has unpolarized light. So if you walked outside and the sun's shining, all the light that you see is unpolarized. Now, a lot of people have experienced using a polarizer is in sunglasses. You buy polarized sunglasses and you polarize the unpolarized light. And what you're doing there is you're filtering out, and I use quotation marks for filtering out, a wavelength of light from passing through your, say, your sunglasses to your eye, so you don't see it. So in this case, we're going to say we get some reflection off of water. So we're at a lake, the sun's shining, and there's light reflecting off of the lake. Well, you put a polarizer in front of your lens so that instead of it, well, it's not filtering, you're actually reflecting the light back away so that it doesn't pass through your lens into where you're taking the photo. Here's some examples. So on the left is without a polarizer. Again, you have the sun, unpolarized light, and there's light coming from the sun. It's bouncing off the hills here, the grass, and it's also bouncing off of the ocean. I think this is the ocean, might be a Great Lake. And then you put a polarizer on, and what it's doing, that polarizer, is reflecting a light source, in this case, off of the bouncing off the ocean here, away from your lens so it doesn't pass through into where you're taking the photo. Here's another example. On the left-hand side, you have a sports car, and it's unpolarized light, and you can see that there's some clouds. It's probably a beautiful day, but there's a ton of reflection coming off the surface of that car. And you put a polarizer on, and you're filtering out, again, quoting quotation marks, of filtering out that light source out from it going into your camera to where that image sensor is. Another really cool thing about polarizers is that it gives you way more saturation in your images. So on the left-hand side, you can see with this reflective light, it dilutes the color that is being exposed here. Whereas on the right-hand side, after that polarizer is put on, you're getting way more color that's coming out. Now, this is where I'm using it in the field, and it becomes very important to me as a photographer when I want to take pictures, in this case, of these pools. Now, without a polarizer, the sky was, you can kind of see it up here in the corner here, it's a gray, bright, white, icky kind of sky. And this pool right here, without a polarizer, would be just reflecting kind of the sky right into my camera. But instead I put a polarizer on, and I could see now through the surface of the water into the pool below. Here's another example. This is Emerald Lake, and I apologize because I took this with my iPhone, not with my camera. But with my iPhone, I took a picture of Emerald Lake here, and my iPhone doesn't have a polarizer on it. And you can see that there's some color in the lake. It's kind of got the emerald color, and it is quite clear, but there's a lot of reflection that's coming off of the sky, off into the water. And with my camera, I add a polarizer on there, and you can remove this really reflective light to actually penetrate down into where you can see all the sticks and the rocks here. Now, another technique that I want to bring to your attention is I'm You could zoom in, and this would be at like 70 mils, taking a picture of this beautiful cabin here, reflection on the water, and it's kind of got a cool frame about it. But instead, I actually put on a wider angle. In this case, I shot at 24 mils. I got really low to the ground, and I was able to use the polarizer to what I think the best function available, which is exposing the rock, I guess not the surface of the lake, but the bottom of the lake, because this is what really Emerald Lake is to me. It's the clear, pristine water, and it tells way more of a story. Now that's Polarizers, and I want to just actually go back to this one shot right here. And this is the polarizer that I'm using. So this is a Lee Filters holder, and I've got a square piece of glass. Well, actually, I don't think this is glass, because filters can be used. It's not always just glass. But yeah, I place this piece of glass in their holder, and I shift it, and I'm able to polarize that surface light that's coming into my camera. And I'll show you how this works a little bit more, but we'll dive into ND filters. So what are ND filters? Well, again, just like what I showed you with the polarizer that you put in front of your lens, an ND filter is, in this case, I'm using a dark piece of glass. So the exposure that you see, say in this case, a waterfall, it can be very bright, and my shutter speed might be too fast to get that long exposure of the flowing water. Well, you get a dark piece of glass, an ND filter, and they come in different ranges of, more transparent to least, and you are allowed to slow your shutter speed down. So again, here I'm at a waterfall, and there's all these bubbles right here, and they're swirling. And if I took a snapshot, everything would be frozen. Whereas if I add an ND filter, nice dark piece of glass, I darken my exposure, I now can slow the shutter speed down. And here I get a smooth waterfall and swirling bubbles. Now, this image right here, the waterfall, it was shot around 2 seconds. Now, you don't need an ND filter to be able to take a picture like this. You can narrow down your aperture, and I won't go into crazy amount of details, but you can set your functions on your camera to darken the exposure so that your shutter speed is slow enough to take 2 seconds long exposure. But these swirling bubbles here, I needed to capture at like 4 minutes to get this type of effect. And that's where putting a really dark piece of glass, in this case, I'm using a 10-stop filter from Lee Filters, and I'm putting in front of my lens, and I'm capturing this image at a really long exposure time. And I'm putting this waterfall and this swirl kind of together in post. Here's an example without a polarizer, even though I said polarizer up there. Just note that I say no polarizer. So there's no polarizer on this one. My camera's on a tripod. I'm shooting at 1/4 of a second shutter. ISO is 100, and I have an f9 for my aperture. On the right side here is the same shot where my camera is on a tripod. And what's different here is that I added a really dark piece of glass, an ND filter, a 10-stop ND filter, and I was able to slow the shutter speed down to 8 minutes long. And I also added a polarizer. So part of that in this holder that I have from Lee Filters allows me to put multiple filters in. So when I mount it in front of my lens, I not only have a really dark piece of glass, which is a 10-stop filter, ND filter, but I also have a polarizer. And you can see the difference between the two. So on the left here, even though it says polarizer, it means no polarizer. There's reflection in the sky, and it's a snapshot in time where the clouds and everything, you can see the ripple on the ocean. Whereas on the right-hand side, you can look down through the surface of that water, and everything is really, really smooth because it's 8 minutes long. And this is kind of my setup when I take pictures at really, really low angles, like you've seen at Emerald Lake. Now, this is actually a bit conservative. I've gotten really, really low, almost submerged right down into the water. And luckily here, there's no tides and I didn't have to worry about the ocean kind of taking it away. But this is kind of one of my setups when I'm taking these shots. Here's a few other photos where I'm using the same setup that I had that I just showed you, where my camera's on the tripod really low, and I'm using a polarizer as well as an ND filter to my advantage. And when I shoot waterfalls, I like to actually get in the river if I can, kind of to look up the riverbed, and especially if you can kind of get an S curve. And on both the left and the right, I'm using a polarizer. Now on the left here, there would be a lot of reflection off the rocks from the sky. It's kind of a bright sky. And I used a polarizer to cut that away just to show me this water flow that's coming down. And I slowed the shutter speed down with a 2-stop polarizer or ND filter. And on the right, I used the exact same thing. Now, I want to point out that if there's a salmon run that's happening, or there's wildlife in these rivers, and you're not supposed to walk in them, please don't, because I don't want you to blame me for that. So I just want to let you know. Here's another shot that I took at Triple Falls, and I'm really, really low to the ground with a wide angle, and I'm using a polarizer so I can see down through the rocks here. And I'm using an ND filter to slow everything down, so a dark filter on my lens to get this shot. This is another shot that I took while I'm standing in the ocean, and I'm actually pointing the camera back towards the shoreline, and I'm using a really dark filter. And this is my setup here. I got my tripod in the sand, and the legs are spread out a little bit further. I forgot my boots, so I just took my boots or my shoes off, and I put a really, really dark filter in front of my lens to slow everything down to get that shot. So we're moving on from filters and polarizers, and I'm sure there might be some questions there about applying that and all of that. And I think Lee Filters here, Patrick or Lillian might jump in. But we're going to move on to a little bit about some of the wild adventures that just these small tools really transform a scene. And in this case, a headlamp when camping. I do a lot of backcountry. And if I don't have a headlamp, sometimes, well, I just can't see, but I use them in my photography. In this case, without the headlamp kind of glowing the inside of that tent, it would be very cold and a bit of a dull moment, where this kind of shows kind of life and energy that's happening out here way off in the woods. I also want to point out that there's snowshoes here, which is a form of transportation to get out there, and I prop those in front to kind of complete that scene of getting out there. That's how we did it. And it's a real adventure. I'm using the weather app to know that it's going to be a clear sky so I can see the stars. And I'm using Photopils to know where the Milky Way is to capture the shot. Here we are in the tent. We didn't sleep that well. It was quite cold. But the next morning, I used those same tools. Again, the snowshoes are propped up. My wife, she opened up the tent, and I got her to turn on the headlamp to show, again, warmth, and that, you know, there's life out in this winter wonderland, and it transforms this image. So I find when you're out in the woods, taking a look at some of the elements around you, maybe you're huge into coffee, and you want to show that steaming hot cup of coffee or something, use those different props to tell a story. And I think it's very powerful. And how I got this shot is, again, I knew when the sunrise was going to be. I had alarm set. I used a headlamp. I timed it for half a second. My wife ended up turning off the headlamp right away because the headlamp is brighter than the sunset, the twilight hour behind us. And again, it brings life and emotion and warmth to this image. And I think it tells a great story. I'm only going to touch on this quickly because I know I'm getting out of time here, but camouflage. I don't use it as much to camouflage myself from wildlife as I do from other humans. So especially if you're in areas like parks and stuff that's surrounded by homes, there's owls, there's eagles. And if you're out walking with a giant honking lens, you're going to attract a lot of other people, which might not also be fair for the wildlife. So I use camouflage to hide myself from other humans so they can't tell that I'm out there taking photos. And I think that's a great tip. And when you're way out in the bush, owls, when they're looking at you and they can't tell what's going on, they bob their head around and stuff, and it's really quite cool. And your advantage point kind of goes up from there. So kind of wrapping up from all of this is, what can we take from this? One is, I hope that the lakes that are close to you, or the ocean or ponds, you start thinking, I wonder if there's a different advantage point by going out on the water, by being away from crowds or branches or different areas. And maybe there's a different shot that's now you're starting to think, okay, what can I do with that? And it's not just the kayak and canoe. I think your vehicle can also be used, but I think there's quite a lot you can do here. Apps, sunrise, sunset, moonrise, moonset, the tides, the weather. One thing that I didn't talk about, but I feel like it's a little bit more of a niche, is waves. And when you get into surf apps, to find out when the best storm waves are and they're crashing up against them. But there's a lot of apps, and if you go online, you can even just search, best apps for photographers. So there's a lot out there. Clothes, I talked a little bit about wearing boots, your clothing, having a headlamp when going camping, camouflage. These are all part of your journey as a photographer to showcase what it is that you do, not just the pictures that you take, but bring people along for the journey. And filters, I can't say enough about, excuse me, about polarizers. I think they've changed my game. Years ago when I threw that on, and you just have this wow moment when you start turning that polarizer and seeing that reflection remove. So polarizers are amazing. And then ND filters. There is soft grad filters where it's dark up top and clear down below, and allows you to block out, I guess, the sunset as the sun's going down, but your foreground is nicely exposed. So there's many different filters. There's many different styles, and every lens could have a filter on it. So here, I hope this kind of encouraged you to look more into that. So this is my website. I do workshops, I teach photography, and I sell my work. But if you have any questions, that is my website, mattshannon.ca. I do grizzly bear workshops and that sort of thing. So it's something that I love doing, and we use a lot of this equipment to get out there, get closer to wildlife, and take pictures in the wild, and I end up these beautiful landscapes and even long exposures. I got one that's happening, it's actually on the 19th, I think it's next weekend, and we're talking exactly about filters, polarizers, and there's a lot. Again, we're going to go over this for like 4 hours on our workshop, so there's a lot you can talk about just on filters alone. But I want to thank everyone for having me, Glacier, for allowing me to speak and leave filters. This is my social media, and these are my tags here. That's my that's my wrap, I guess, on it. Really, really happy to be here, and hopefully I get some good questions from people.
Well, it's funny. Patrick and I have been in the YouTube chat while there's a question. Everybody's been very quiet in the chat room except for like the past 8 minutes, and so there's been a little bit of a barrage of questions. And at this point, I'm pretty sure Patrick and I have answered them all because Patrick obviously works for leaf filters, but I also use leaf filters for a lot of my long exposure photography. And the reminder of using a polarizer, it's funny, I got my start in architectural photography, so a polarizer was always the thing, right? And I don't actually own one right now for my current lenses. I was like, oh, I probably should get one of those again. So thanks for the reminder.
It'll change your life.
Apparently. Yeah, I mean, just great feedback from people who are tuning in. They love seeing all the different photos. And, you know, I think you covered a lot of information. So those of you tuning in, if you have a quick question before we wrap up, let me know, or let us know rather. I do want to mention there is a filter promo happening for Photofest right now. So if you're in the market for a filter, you can save 15%. That promo code I've shared in the chat. It's available online through our website, or you can come in and shop. I know a couple of you have some specific questions. Feel free to send me a message. I know Jim has my email address, or give the store a call, and we can help kind of dial in those products to let you know what we have in stock. Yeah, I mean, we're just asking like filters for specific questions, or filters for specific lenses that, you know, we're handling that in the chat room right now. Yeah, I think that was great. Thank you so much, Matt, and to Lillian and Patrick for helping to get this set up. It's always great to see this kind of work. Primarily I'm a portrait photographer, but I've spent the past couple of years, especially during the pandemic, diving into long exposure photography and also teaching workshops on it and just having a lot of fun with it. And I love the kind of meditative process behind all of that. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I think we're good. I mean, there's still some banter going on in the chat on YouTube, but again, if you have any follow-up questions about the filters, please feel free to give the store a call. I know, Jim, you know me. You can certainly send me a message. We'll do a quick check on that one adapter ring for you to make sure it's going to work, or if we have it in stock right now. All right, Matthew, thank you so much for your time. Sorry, Matt. One of my good friends is named Matthew, but he
Matthew or Matt, it's
right.
Totally fine.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that lovely presentation and all of that inspirational work. Patrick and Lillian, thank you so much for your time and organization to get this on the schedule for Photofest. Just a reminder to everybody who is watching, this will be our wrap-up presentation for today, but tomorrow we go live at 9 a.m. With a Nikon ambassador. We have several sessions tomorrow. We have a couple of photo walks tomorrow, including one that I'll be leading in the evening downtown along the waterfront. We have a couple of presentations on Sunday, but also don't forget, this is also one of our biggest sales of the year. Really, it's kind of the biggest sale of the year. So this is a great opportunity to check out the website or come in, say hi to some of the reps who are in store, pick up maybe a new camera bag or filters, or whatever you might need. We'd love to see you. So Matt, everybody at Lee Filters, thank you again so much for this presentation. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And hopefully maybe one of these days we can have you come up and do, or down rather, because you're not that far away. And we can do some kind of in-person workshop. Patrick, I'm putting that out there.
I haven't forgotten. One of these days we'll be able to hang out all together again in person. That's for sure.
That's for sure. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll bid you a good evening and have a great weekend.